Hey, can you help me with one more thing?
Sure. Wait, did I just say yes?
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our event Boundaries in Bloom. Maureen, would you like to start what inspired you, us, for this event, for this workshop?
Sure. Well, I'm not doing this workshop with Clara because I have boundaries all figured out. It's quite the opposite. I'm doing it because I started noticing there are deeper patterns at play, and understanding them has been surprisingly very relieving and helpful in my process. It's just as simple as that.
And for me, growing up in a family dynamic that was not very stable, boundaries was never something that I consciously learned. And there was just no clear language to them, no real awareness of what it actually is to have boundaries. I just noticed the shift that I would be feeling overwhelmed when I would say yes when I actually meant to say no. I would lose clarity in certain relationships that evolve into toxic relationships. And then after I'd done some deeper inner work, this deeper awareness emerged that when I wasn't connected to my own limits, how could I even recognize limits of the others? And that deeper inner work also led me to realize why I would overstep or override my own boundaries. Because when the love wasn't consistent, I learned to override myself to preserve the connection. And so boundaries are the moment that I learned to stop abandoning myself for the name of love. And so with that, I would invite you to just sit back and relax because Maureen and we are very steep in a Jungian psychology. A Jungian psychology is a depth psychology, meaning it's working with myths and fairy tales and symbolism. And we would like to open with a story, a myth about Persephone. There's few reasons why to open up with myths, so we kind of can allow the conscious mind to put it at rest and allow the story touch something deeper within yourself.
Right. And this particular story, it's only 2 minutes long. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear the recording of it. So here we go. This is a story called The Return of Persephone. In Greek mythology, there is a young woman named Persephone. She is the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of earth and fertility. One day, while Persephone is gathering flowers in the meadow, the ground suddenly opens and she is taken into the underworld by Hades. Demeter searches everywhere for her daughter. In her grief, the earth becomes barren. Nothing grows. Winter spreads across the land. Eventually, a compromise is made. Persephone will spend part of the year in the underworld and part of the year returning to the world above. When she rises from the underworld, Demeter rejoices. The earth begins to bloom again and spring arrives.
Thank you, Maureen. So why start with a story about descending? A few reasons that we picked that story is because we are now finding ourselves in the point of return from the descent, meaning yesterday was the spring equinox. It's the first day of spring. So we are being reborn, rejuvenated. So is the earth. Also, if anybody follows the sky, we were in a new moon, which the new moon disappears for 3 days is not on the sky. It just goes in the underworld, if you will, just disappear for 3 nights. The ancients were very aware of this phenomenon, and they're following very very clearly. And so what this can mirror is our own inner psychological process, where we throughout our lives we go into the underworld, we're descending, and this is a time when you go within, where you're trying to withdraw. Specifically for women, we kind of go through that each month, right? We go through our cycle, and there are moments of a cycle where you feel you need to spend some time alone. You want to withdraw from the outside world. You need to go in the you enter the cave in the darkness. The reason for the descent is that so something old can be dissolved. And so sometimes the descent is not very a pleasant or a comfortable thing, because fear can arise. We are entering the unknown. We can feel confused. We can feel stuck. Those familiar fear from the past are arising, and just everything feels like we're losing a grip or control of the outer world. And from the Jungian perspective, this is just the way that the psyche is moving. The familiar again is dissolving so that something new can emerge.
And when that new part begins to return, it rarely arrives as clarity. It arrives as tension, maybe as discomfort, or maybe even a quiet inner no. And that no is often the beginning of a boundary. So boundaries are not relational tools. They're part of a psychological rebirth. Now, a relational tool is how you stay connected when things feel like they're falling apart.
Mhm. And so, to kind of put this all together, why the descent and boundary, and how does it all connect? Well, so in order to connect with something that, let's say, we haven't practiced our life, we have to do the descent. And this is where the map of psyche that Jung provided for our Westerners comes very handy. But this is, at least for my better understanding, I always find very helpful to see this map as an image of an iceberg. It is said that the above, what we can see from the iceberg, that would be the ego consciousness. The ego, the I, is the one that's watching right now our event, that is maybe typing some notes, is aware of the body. That is the ego consciousness. And it was documented that it's only 5 to 7% of our entire being. So 93 to 95% of our being is below the surface of the water, is in other words, is the personal unconscious, and is the collective unconscious. It's the depth that we are not aware of. So we think that we can control our choices, our emotions, our thoughts, our moods, but in fact, we are being influenced from the depths of our personal and collective unconscious. The personal unconscious, the layer right below the surface of the water, is your memories, your learned patterns, your lived experiences, and even deeper still, it's the collective unconscious. And this is shaped by universal human patterns, and Carl Jung called them the archetypes.
I have like a little different visual here. The conscious mind, let's just look at it. It's the television set that you see there. That's like your ego. The personal unconscious takes up all of this headspace right there. And, your conscious mind plans, it decides, it evaluates, but much of your life is actually happening, like Clara said, beneath the awareness. So your habits, your emotional memory, any of your automatic responses, well, when something shifts inside of you, the ego often is the last to know. So when you're driving a car, grocery shopping, you're mainly operating in the conscious mind, but the personal unconscious is still helping in the background. So, it basically is making decisions, although your ego is going, at the grocery store, which brand of cereal, which lane should I drive in? It's paying attention to the environment, always planning and evaluating, but the personal unconscious has a real supporting role here. We'll go into that a little more.
Mm-hmm. But also the this deeper layer, the personal unconscious, it doesn't just hold a memory. It also holds everything that you pushed away due to your adaptive process, meaning when you were growing up, meaning what you learn very quickly, what is acceptable within your family dynamic, within the institutions such as schools or later on jobs. You kind of learn what is acceptable of behavior, emotion, expression, and whatnot, and what is not. And so when this begins to rise, it doesn't feel like an insight. It feels like an emotion. And what is it, Maureen? What did Jung call this?
The shadow. We're
The
going to go into
shadow.
we're
Yep.
going to go into both of them, complex and shadow, but I'm going to cover a little bit about the shadow. Young
Mhm.
called it the shadow, the parts that you did not feel safe to express. Maybe anger, desire, power, creativity. It's not gone. It's just hidden. And still, it's shaping our lives from behind the scenes. The disowned parts of ourselves, our qualities, our feelings, our impulses that we pushed out of awareness because at some point they felt unacceptable, unsafe, maybe unwanted. And a simple everyday example would be the nice person who disowns their anger. You learn that good people don't get angry. And so you suppress your anger. There are probably reasons why you would want to find a healthy way to express your anger. Just know that it's telling you something. It's okay to express your anger in a clean way. And we'll go into that a little more.
And as I mentioned with the iceberg slide, the realm, the deepest realm, Jung called it the collective unconscious. That's the realm of the archetypes. It's the kind of an invisible field that moves through all of us. And that is why we started with the myth about Persephone, because what Jung noticed when he was studying cross-cultural myths and legends and fairy tales and religions, every myth had a similar pattern. And so that's how he came to the discovery of collective unconscious. And this is where we can find the same patterns in the collective unconscious.
And so, where do boundaries fit into all of this? Well, boundaries really aren't walls, they're filters. And they help the ego decide what to let in, what do I respond to, what actually belongs to me, what happens inside when we actually try to set boundaries. Well, fear arises.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is a signal, the internal alarm system right before transformation. So when fear shows up in your life, it may not mean, something's wrong. It may mean that you're standing at a threshold. The role of fear in the psyche and boundaries, it functions like an internal alarm system. And we're going to show you more about how boundaries help us respond to that signal.
I'm sure you can recall a situation from your daily life where you let's say knew that saying no would be the right thing to do, but right in that moment where you're about to say no, the fear arises and it's like a ringing alarm, and your body knows. Your body knows way before your conscious mind does. And how does the body react? I know that in me, my chest just tightens, my throat tightens. I can barely speak. Sometimes my hands, they get really sweaty and cold, or I just get very hot-headed. So this is the body responding and ringing the alarm. This is the fear that it's arising. Or if it's not in a bodily sensation, you may find yourself with someone invites you to an event that you really don't want to go, and then you start to over explain in a text message. You get a mile-long text message, I can go because my kids have this and that, and you over explain. Or you're trying to people please, or you just avoid it completely, or you just ending up saying yes when you actually mean no. And these are the signals. So you may just ask, what is this fear is really trying to show me?
Well, yet even when, we feel signals, sometimes the signal shows up as a strong emotion, resentment, anxiety, fear, exhaustion, and the feelings often appear when something in our environment is crossing an internal line. We override ourselves. So, why exactly does this happen? These signals that are often messages from the deeper parts of our psyche that are trying to protect something really important within us.
Mm-hmm. And we're just going to throw more theory on you, but I promise it's going to make sense, because what is now being activated is what Jung called a complex. And complex is an emotional pattern that was formed through past experience. And I want to go back again to the iceberg image where the ego consciousness is above the water surface. That part is actually operating in a linear sense, meaning that the ego is aware of a past, is aware of a present, and it's aware of future. But everything below the surface of the water, there is no timeline. So when you're thrown in a situation, something gets activated within you, and so you're reacting from the past. You're not reacting from a present moment.
Yeah, I can really relate to this slide. So in those moments, the adult self begins to fade and something younger takes over. The nervous system's no longer responding to what's happening now, but to what once happened. And then if I could just quickly indulge in a little story, one time I was setting up for a breath workshop when I was in training with James, and I was upstairs in the kitchen getting things ready, and a mouse kind of scurried across the floor. And what did I do? I actually jumped up on top of the sink part, and while I'm up there perched, I literally was thinking to myself, this is stupid. I hope nobody sees me, but I could not help it. I started shaking, and I literally, at the same time, there was a conflict going on inside of me. And my first thought was, don't tell James. And I'm begging the other girls, don't tell him, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. But they told James, and he came upstairs. Instead of judging me or looking at me, what he realized was he saw like a little 12-year-old girl who was actually responding to something from when I was 12 years old. It wasn't me, the 50-something woman at the time there. It was a 12-year-old girl that had shown up. And at the same time, how can these two things be happening where I'm shaming myself at the same time scared out of my mind? Well, that's a complex, especially when we're asking ourselves, like in this slide, why did I just act that way? Clara, did you want to share something about what happened with you?
Yeah, I have a story too. It was just recent. I made plans with a friend of mine, and I was excited about spending the time. And it was a soap making that we're gonna make soap together. And, I texted in the morning just to confirm if we're still on, and all I got back was just respond, nope. And then nothing, just ghosting. And then later on, I received a text message. Sorry, I just needed time for myself. And so right then I felt the complex being activated. Right then I regressed to my 6 or 7 year old self, probably, when as a little child I was left alone, and it just triggered all the responses. So instead of right away, what I wanted to say, no, this is not okay. This is not how I wish the situation was handled. Right away, I went into, oh, that's okay. Yes, you probably did need time for myself, completely overriding my needs, just like I did in the past as the little girl. So what happened is that typically when this happens, you get the trigger from the outer world, and that triggers an emotion, and the emotion then triggers fear, because I was afraid if I say this is not okay, I would lose that connection. I would lose a friend. So it's not okay to state my needs. So then I want to accommodate, right? But just like Maureen, I'd also receive a corrective experience when my friend took complete accountability for that situation. There was an apology, and another signal that I knew that I'm reacting from a past was that even though the apology was made, accountability was taken, I still wanted that person to suffer and feel the pain as I was feeling the pain. There was nothing else that the person could have done, yet the complex wanted some sort of a justification. If that reaction was not appropriate, and that signaled for me, okay, something got activated, let's work through it, let's see where it's coming from. And that awareness brought it de-escalation of that trigger. So now we talked about the complex. So like I said before, it is a cluster of experiences. They have the same core of that experience. So for example, I just use my example of abandonment. So any type of experience from that moment that was created because it was so overwhelming, it kind of encapsulated that energy. And then later on, as I would go through my life, any type of situation that would even resemble either rejection or abandonment would kind of like gravitated to that cluster of energy. I think it's also important to say that these complexes, they are autonomous. It's not that we are willingly let them override our ego. They just come on. And I'm sure that you've probably even experienced that, like once the complex kind of like passes away, you kind of look at yourself like, oh, what have I done? And so that would be the complex, but also something else is arising, and it's the shadow. And the shadow is trying to return. The shadow is trying to come from personal unconscious and is trying to be integrated. And that can feel very threatening because it's asking you to do something that you never done before, that felt scary. So it's very anxiety producing, and you might want to avoid it, or just the fear completely freezes you and you go maybe into a fight flight mode.
Right. So basically here we talked about a shadow and we talked about a complex, and we don't want to complicate things, but the deeper truth is the shadow is something you've disowned. And the complex is how you react when it gets touched. You feel the complex before you actually understand the shadow. And often the intensity of your reaction, it's pointing directly to something within you that's ready to be reclaimed. The shadow is what's hidden, and it's the disowned parts of ourself, or the stuff hidden in the basement. And complexes are our emotional reactions, our patterns, and they get triggered and activated, and they're somewhat hidden from us until we see the reaction of those around us and our response. I mean, I've experienced this where some complex gets activated. And all of a sudden I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody left. What happened? Did I say something? I actually wasn't even aware of it. And I really wasn't. And then somebody tells me about it later.
And so oftentimes, boundaries, to be able to set healthy boundaries, that is connected to assertiveness, to say the healthy no. And then for somebody, especially for women, when we were maybe told when we were young girls don't supposed to express anger, so that anger gets pushed into the shadow. And so that's why we have to descend, allow the shadow to come online and to kind of reclaim the gold, the boundary from the shadow. And so how do we do that? Well, it may sound simple, but it can be very difficult. It's just we need to notice. We need to put strengthen the muscle of the observer, of noticing. Because if we're noticing, we're separating us from that reaction. And that is the goal. The more you start to observe your body reaction, your emotion, and your thought process, this allows you to separate yourself from the complex. So a question you can ask yourself: what am I feeling? Where do I feel it in my body? What are the thoughts? What is, because the complex also has a certain narrative, certain story. So that's how you can kind of track it. What are my thoughts? What am I feeling? And where do I feel it in the body? And then you want to name it. Anything that you name it, when you personify it, it kind of loses its own power. I like to always tell people is that just think about anything that you have no knowledge about. If it's abstract, it's always going to have more power over you than once you get to know it. Once you get to create a relationship to it. So you do want to name it. You want to verbalize how you feel. And so you want to say, this is overwhelm. I feel fear. I feel pressure. And then the shift starts, because now it's going to be conscious.
And from here, the ego comes back online. And instead of reacting, you respond. And that response can be simple. I can't do that. I need more time. That doesn't work for me. We need to communicate the boundary. Use our mouths to communicate the boundary. Now, ego in 12-step programs often get demonized. In Jungian psychology, we do not demonize the ego. A lot of times it's because people don't understand the ego, like, oh, they're full of themselves, they got a big ego. I would mainly look at it as the ego. We want to work with the ego, and the ego can be in service to us. So we communicate the boundary and express it externally, followed by holding the boundary. And this is where the real work begins. Holding that boundary, because the fear most likely will still be there. You're still going to feel all of those other things kind of pushing it away. Change, vulnerability, pushing stuff away, but you still hold the boundary. And, you don't have to abandon yourself through this. So just to quick recap on those 4 things, we notice the signal in our bodies. We name what's happening inside our heads. We communicate the boundary that's been crossed, and then we hold that boundary.
It's beautiful. I may want to put an image to it. You might imagine boundaries like a lighthouse. The lighthouse doesn't stop the waves, but it helps you orient it within them. So in again in Jungian psychology, you can see that the psyche movement often looks like this. So it moves from instinct. Instinct becomes fear. Then you bring awareness to the fear. So fear becomes awareness. Then out of the awareness comes meaning, and then the meaning becomes a boundary. And that boundary allows something new to take form.
And then fear asks the question.
And boundaries gives the answer. And awareness is what allows something new to grow. Okay, so at this time, I would like for you to, if you have pen and paper handy, we can take this time for some reflection. And I would invite you to think of that situation when you said yes and when you actually meant no. So think of the situation, and if you'd like, you can write some notes down. You can ask yourself, what was happening at that moment? What did I feel in my body when I said yes, but I meant no? And what kind of fear appeared, meaning fear of what? And that fear might have been of rejection, conflict, disappointment, losing connection, fear of losing connection.
What fear appeared? Would anybody care to at least maybe share? Did a rejection, maybe a conflict or disappointment,
maybe
selfish, losing connection? Jen, did you want to add? Oh, you're just scratching yourself.
Oh no, I can share.
Thank you.
Should I just share a word or should I say the scenario?
Oh, would you mind sharing the scenario?
No. So last fall, my friend was turning 50, and we were there's 6 friends of mine from many years ago. And so we tried to get together, and it was like the time of year she proposed is a really challenging one for me because it's a very busy work cycle. I had a couple other trips in the month already. But I just said yes because how could I say no when it was her birthday? And it's a tradition from all of our friends to get together. And I immediately felt overwhelmed. And then what I tend to do is I go, oh, it'll be fine. I'll push through it and I'll get it figured out. Like, don't, like, it's still down the road. You'll sort it out then. But of course, when it came time to go, I felt really overwhelmed and I didn't feel fully present. And my fear was out of conflict or disappointing, or how can I put my needs above hers when it's her special birthday? So
do you think you might have been trying to preserve the friendship, the relationship, and the connection?
yeah. And also I could have said, no, you guys go ahead. I can't attend at that time. But then I would have had a giant fear of missing out. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I didn't really know how to get my way out of it, like work my way through it because of all of those fears. But yeah, losing connection, being thought of as not a good friend, being thought of as selfish.
Did you feel it in your body somewhere that you can recall?
Um, it's more like I just feel kind of a shrinking, like a pressure around me, like an energetic pressure, like kind of crushing against my body.
I would almost ask Jen if you can remember this first time when you felt the pressure. Like, how old do you think you were when you felt that pressure and the fear?
Gosh, I'm sure it's really old. I I can't off the top of my head think of when it began, but I'm sure maybe as I was forming friendships in my younger years and wanting, to belong and be a good friend was always really important to me, like to be thought of as a good friend. So I'm guessing in my early years as I made new friends.
So now we kind of located the complex, right? And so what was pushed in the shadow, Jenny, if I'm going to take, because you bravely shared. So what do you think was pushed in a shadow?
I mean, I guess that I'm worthy enough to have an opinion about an event or a thing that's happening in the group. Like I don't have to always acquiesce to be a good friend. So I guess maybe just the notion that someone might not like me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're getting at, but that's what comes to mind.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we want to try active imagination. And what it is that you engage yourself with the dialogue of that fear. So, Jen, if I'm going to take your example, so you would kind of allow yourself to go back into that experience, into when you felt the fear of saying no because you did not want to lose that connection. You did not wanted to miss out. So that fear, when it arises, you can almost imagine, or if you can imagine, that the fear would have a voice or a presence, and then you can ask the fear, what are you protecting me from? What am I afraid it will happen? So I can give you example again from my own experience. Recently over holidays, I had a fear that just completely threw me into fight flight mode for at least, I would say, 5 to 6 weeks. And it's that mode that everything within me just got shut down. I am very enthusiastic person. I'm very happy-go-lucky, but in that moment, everything got shut down. It was tension, contraction within the body, fight flight mode, high cortisol in the body, stress level, all that, everything was just happening. Of course, the first reaction wanted to be, let me just distract myself with binge watching Netflix, with drinking some wine, something to numb it. And then it got to the point where I said, no, I know better than that. And so I engaged myself with this active imagination. And I started to allow the fear to manifest in my body, and I felt it in my body. And then I took a pen and paper and I started writing questions. Who are you? Why are you here? What are you trying to teach me? And it was in fact that moment that it did tell me. I was surprised how precise it was, because I was asking question, well, what would happen? How do I do this? And it would ask me, I'm here to teach you, but if I would tell you the outcome, you would not go through this threshold. You're not intend to know the outcome, otherwise the whole process would not be successful, right? And you can see this in many tales and many legends, that the hero or heroine does not know the outcome when they are called on a quest, on the hero's journey. They don't know if the journey is going to be successful. Oftentimes it's not, but oftentimes it is as well. And so it's the cliche to say that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, but that's really what it is. It's about to really going in, really standing with fear, asking it a question, and you'll be surprised the answers it can provide you. So if you allow me, I would invite you to give it a try right now. So again, think of a situation where you felt fear because you wanted to set boundaries. You felt the fear, and because out of the fear, you didn't set the boundaries. you kind of went along. You override it yourself. But this time, just try to sit with the fear. You can close your eyes and take a deep breath. And feel the fear. Feel it in the body. And just allow yourself to surrender to fear. And when you're ready, you can ask the fear, what are you protecting me from? Who are you? What do you want from me? This is not something that you have to answer right away.
Something surprising here. Fear is not the enemy, is it? It's the guardian trying to protect something vulnerable inside of us.
So you may take this as a tool, and when you find yourself that you have time for yourself, you can use this tool not just to engage with fear, but you can engage with any kind of overwhelming emotion. All you really have to do is just sit down, take a few deep breaths, close your eyes, and try to relax, and try to surrender to an emotion, and just ask the question. It takes time to build this relationship, and kind of you have to practice this just like with anything. But over time, if you're consistent with it, if it's something that is that it's interesting, intriguing to you, those parts of you, they will start to talk back to you, and you might be surprised all the information that you may get. Some parts may be really angry with you, some parts may not just want to talk to you at all, and some parts they just want to reveal all this information. So it's very interesting, and just be curious about it. But just like understanding these emotions and fear, it's also important that you get to practice of relaxing your nervous system. And the way to do it is simply trying to practice saying sentences like, I won't be able to do that, or I need time before deciding, or that doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for that. Just trying to practice it. The practice is the tool that will allow for the nervous system to kind of start to relax, and then you can take more of the overwhelm. Your tolerance and your patience will expand if you allow the nervous system to relax. But your nervous system needs your assistance for that.
I'd like to invite you right now to try something really small. Choose one boundary sentence that feels relevant to your life right now. You don't have to say it out loud. If that feels uncomfortable, just say it quietly to yourself. Notice what happens in your body when you say it. Do you notice any tension? Do you notice a relief? Maybe a fear? All of that is information.
And so just like we are finding ourselves right now in the spring equinox, rebirthing, it just reminds us any growth begins beneath the surface with planting seeds. And so before anything appears above the ground, something is already forming. And you may plant the seeds in the form of writing down 2 things about fear. Maybe write down the fear that you are ready for it to loosen, a boundary that you're ready for it to grow.
And then you might imagine that boundary as a seed. Seeds require protection and they require space, a little bit of water, a little bit of sunshine, and they require patience.
Yes.
So perhaps we could say it this way. Fear asks the question, boundaries give the answer. It's important to notice where we override ourselves, where we say yes, but we feel a no, where we stay connected at the cost of our own center.
And awareness allows something new to grow. So as you leave today, don't ask yourself, how do I make others respect my boundaries? But ask yourself, where am I ready to stand with myself? Even if it changes what I'm available for. Because boundaries they're not rejecting somebody, they're not rejection. They are alignment. They are self-respect. They are the quiet decision to no longer abandon yourself.
I loved your exercises and the practice just to get me thinking of ways to approach my fears and my boundaries.
No, I mean, I really liked the examples. I do real well with examples. And I think I've been a yes person all my life, and I'm really practicing just in the last months, 6 months. It's okay not to say yes, and it's okay to maybe not answer. It's okay to let me get back to you. That's something I've never practiced in my 60 years of life. Like, it's always been, the yes, yes, okay, I'll do, oh, yeah, people pleasing, all this stuff. And, I have difficult people in my life. So this is great for me. Being upset that I might have hurt somebody's feelings. It's like, you know what? I have to protect myself because nobody's going to do it for me.
It just made me affirm that I need to stand up for myself. And I've had some awareness of saying yes when I really needed to say no. And this person would not speak to me. Pleasing my friend hurt me.